Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are in our second installment of our Building in the Post-COVID World, Tips and Best Practices for Developers, Builders, and Contractors, presented by Levitt First Insurance and the Building and Realty Institute. Today's topic, actual Westchester construction industry cyber attack case studies. For those of you that are joining us for the first time today, the BRI is a trade association in Westchester County and the Hudson Valley that includes home builders, multifamily, commercial, and mixed-use developers, remodelers, and others. They advocate for the best interests of the real estate industry to government and the community. They provide knowledge, education, and resources to their members, and they create opportunities for their members to build relationships and improve their businesses. Thank you to the BRI and Levitt First for hosting and sponsoring today's webinar. Jeff Hanley is going to be our moderator today. He is the Associate Executive Director for the Building and Realty Institute. So Jeff, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Amanda. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for participating in our second webinar of this important series. As Amanda mentioned, I am Jeff Hanley, the Associate Executive Director of the Building and Realty Institute, and it is my pleasure to be your host this afternoon. We have three panelists who are ready to address this important issue. The first is Jason Schisciano. Jason is the co-president of Levitt First Insurance, which is a major insurance company based in Tarrytown. Levitt First Insurance serves as the insurance manager for the Building and Realty Institute and its 7 component associations. Also on our panel this afternoon is Karen Kavanaugh. She is the Director of Network Operations and the Chief Technology Officer for Component Assembly Systems. Component Assembly Systems is a major contracting company in the New York metro area. It is based in Pelham. It is very, very well known. Our third panelist is James Kudla. He is the president of Terry Tech Computer Consultants, which has since evolved into the Westchester branch of Compass MSAP. Jamie is an expert on computing issues associated with the topics that our webinar this afternoon will be focusing on. So at this point, again, thank you for participating. We will begin the session. We will start with Jason Schisciano, again, who is co-president of Levitt First Insurance. Jason, it's all yours.
Hi, thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy that we can host this important webinar on such a critical topic, a topic that is growing in importance with the proliferation of cyber attacks on literally every size and type of business. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll get started. So as Jeff mentioned, I'm Jason Schisciano. I'm co-president of Levitt First Insurance. We're insurance brokers in Tarrytown, New York, also with a branch in Parsippany, New Jersey. And we specialize in business insurance, personal insurance, as well as surety bonding. We are Westchester's largest insurance broker, and we really focus on protecting your priorities. We have a very, very large practice relative to construction contractors. So fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, we are very familiar with cyber liability claims, cyber attacks on our construction contractor clients. So let me start off by just showing you a few examples of some of the claims that we've dealt with in our office over the last couple of years. These are claims that really happened. These are not fictitious. I'll start off by saying on the first row there that unfortunately we've had a number of contractor clients who have had various types of cyber liability claims, cyber attacks, Jamie's going to go into more detail on the various types of attacks that can occur. But we've had a number of contractors that have had these attacks and have unfortunately not had insurance in place to address the exposure. So there's no coverage in that case, obviously, and that's the worst case. On the brighter side, we had a general contractor that suffered a malware virus attack that effectively locked up their system and corrupted their data and systems and damaged their physical equipment. That claim, for example, was $72,000 paid out for legal and forensics costs, technical support, consulting, and equipment. Another example, we had a trade contractor that was involved in a social engineering scam and fraud where one of their employees got what looked to be a legitimate email from an insurance company with the insurance company logo, somebody that they had communicated with previously on payment of insurance premiums. And it turns out that the email actually, which was advising that their bank account and routing number had changed. Unfortunately, that was a fraudulent email and it wasn't confirmed before the money was sent out. And so in excess of $100,000 was sent out to Never Never Land to a fraudulent recipient. They were able to recoup some of that, and the insurance company ended up paying $48,000 for reimbursement or replacement of the funds that were transferred fraudulently. Next, we have a developer and general contractor that was a victim or wrapped up in the Kaseya attack, which is a large provider of hosting services. This contractor lost all network access, which was later restored by the host. However, in the process, their PCs, their laptops as well were disabled permanently and had to be replaced. So not a major situation here. They were able to recover and repair some of them, but there was a $3,000 cost for PCs and laptops. Not a huge sum, but again, could have been a much greater exposure. And had they not had the insurance, they would have collected nothing. And then finally, another trade contractor, victim of a ransomware attack. This is a very common type of attack. Data encrypted and held for ransom. There was a six-figure ransom demand, which was not paid. You may have heard over the weekend, the Biden administration is starting to take a position on the use of cryptocurrency to pay or to prevent payment of ransoms in cryptocurrency, which might help mitigate some of those ransomware attacks. But in this case, although the ransom wasn't paid, unfortunately, there was a tremendous amount of cost and expense involved in data forensics, restoration of systems and databases, as well as legal costs. So with that, I'll let Jeff move it over to the next speaker. Thanks for listening.
Jason, thank you so much. Our next speaker is Karen Kavanaugh. As I mentioned, she is the Director of Network Operations and the Chief Technology Officer for Component Assembly Systems. As I mentioned previously, a major contracting firm in the New York metro area. Karen will address what her company has done and continues to do to ensure against cyber attacks. Karen, it's your turn.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jason. As Jeff mentioned, Component Assembly is a premier drywall company with a large presence in the New York metropolitan area. However, we also have offices across the country, and we are running jobs across the country, and we've been in business for more than 54 years. So a well-established company. Some of the things that Jason mentioned, let's share my screen. Some of the things that Jason just mentioned, we see every day. We see the phishing attacks. We see the trying to spoof what emails look like coming from our trade partners. We see scanning of our networks through the internet. And so you have to position yourself to protect against those things. A few of the things that we do, it's a little bit of a busy slide, but these are all important points to try to reduce your attack surface to the internet. As a contracting company, the majority of our staff is in the field working on jobs and needs access to email and data. And so we have to be constantly vigilant as to making sure those pathways are secure. So, you've got your basics of antivirus, but multi-factor authentication is very big. Having a regular password expiration, complexity, firewalls, geofence, if you don't do business with the country, lock them out. Logging and alerts. Alerts may save you someday. When you get an alert that says something has happened in your environment that you didn't expect, that's your opportunity to stop it before it goes further. Phish training, because it is so common for emails to either have malicious links or attachments. We actually train our users on how to identify those emails, and we test regularly. And if someone clicks on a link, then they get more training. Your employees are your largest vulnerability, and not intentionally, but that is the most vulnerable aspect of your company. Just as a point of reference, we see over 10,000 alerts scanning our network from the public internet every week. We block them at the firewall, but they are happening. There is no industry that's not under attack today. In terms of your password length and complexity, this is an interesting chart that we talk about frequently, which is how long should your password be and how complex should it be? And I'm sure you've seen through your banking and access to other websites that they're getting longer and they are having more requirements as to what the makeup of your password needs to be. That's all I had.
Karen, thank you so much. Our next panelist is James Kudla. He is the general manager of the Westchester branch of Compass MSP. Compass MSP is an award-winning managed service provider with offices throughout New England, the Mid-Atlantic, Florida, and the Midwest. James is trained technically, having earned a BS in mechanical engineering from Binghamton University. He started his career as a systems engineer for General Motors and played a significant role in designing the HVAC system for General Motors' first electric car, the EV1. James owned and operated Terry Tech Computer Consultants, which is based in Westchester County, for almost 20 years. The company earned a spot as one of the best businesses in Westchester County, as ranked by 914 Inc. James Kudla, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that nice introduction. I'm going to share my screen here as well. So thank you so much for having me as a guest and a panelist to discuss the Westchester construction industry cyber attack case studies and things that we can do to prevent, and other items that we need to be aware of. Thank you for that, the information that you shared, Karen, and I hope that you're not going to say that soon my password is going to have to be 18 characters long. I hope we're not going to get to that point. It looks like it's going that way, but I think maybe we got a little bit of time. But so thank you again, Jeff, for the introduction. As mentioned, my name is James Kudla. I am the general manager of Compass MSP, the Westchester office. I owned and operated Terry Tech Computer Consultants for almost 20 years, and we were just acquired by Compass MSP on June 30th of this year. So we're in our transition phase here, and we wanted to align ourselves with a bigger, more established, award-winning MSP. So we continue to serve clients in the New York metro area, and we look forward to leveraging resources of Compass MSP, who is headquartered in Hartford, Connecticut. So a little bit of an agenda today. We are going to talk about who is targeted and who's being attacked. Then I think it makes some sense to put some relevance around this. Why are they doing this? Are they really attacking me? And what kind of information are they looking for? Then we're going to talk about some common threats, and we're going to kind of keep this high level. If you want to talk about common threats as well as the next topic that we're going to talk about, what else can you do? I mean, we don't have, literally you could go on for days and you could just be getting started. So we're going to try and touch on a couple of highlights give you some things that are actionable and things that you can take home with you today, and maybe things that you can take back to your tech team to continue that conversation. So in regards to who is being attacked, well, every day we wake up, right, and we're hearing these sensational stories about companies and organizations that are being compromised. And a lot of times when they're talking about these breaches and attacks, you hear the term ransomware. And I'm going to talk about ransomware in a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means and you know, how people are having to pay these exorbitant fees to get their data back. But to give you an example, you know, just recently we all heard about the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. We heard about JBS Foods. JBS Foods is the world's largest meat distributor. Combined between those two attacks, they had to pay over $15 million in ransomware. The Colonial Pipeline is 4.4, JBS was $11 million, which is just outrageous. So, you know, a lot of us, you know, you might operate, you might work with an organization that is nowhere near the size or scale or on the radar as the two that I just mentioned, JBS and Colonial. So you might say, hey, look, you know, I'm 10 people, I'm 50 people, I'm too small, nobody's looking to attack me. I'm here to say you couldn't be more wrong. In certain instances, maybe you are being attacked, maybe you're being targeted, but most of the businesses that we work with they're below the radar, right? They're not on somebody's agenda to break into and steal their trade secrets and that sort of thing. But what's happening is there's governments, there's terrorist groups, and really organized crime. And what they've done is they've put together a fairly complex network of automated hacking tools, right? So they're basically trolling the internet, looking at millions of IP addresses, and IP addresses are just addresses on the internet, right, that you can get to publicly. So they're going across all of these IP addresses, and they're basically looking for open doors. They're looking for low-hanging fruit. So a good deal of these attacks are automated. And when they hook onto somebody, when they find a victim, there's a good chance they don't even know who you are, who's at the other end. So basically, they'll infect you with the virus or the malicious payload or whatever it is, and they may not even know who you are, right? So when I say that you are being attacked, without question, you're being attacked. And I want to just draw attention, you know, a couple of the graphic that I'm showing here. You can see there's one specific industry that's being attacked. It's professional services in healthcare and financial services and transportation. But I think an important statistic to note is that 43% of attacks are aimed at small and mid-sized offices. So again, I don't know the demographics of everyone that's on this call, but I have a pretty good idea that, you know, several of you, if not all of you, fall into that category. So I also have news for you. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Ransomware attacks have skyrocketed in the first half of 2021. There was 304 million attempted attacks. There was 185% year-over-year increase in ransomware attacks in the first half of 2021. And if you look at Q2 as compared to Q1, Q2 was higher than Q1. So the trend is that it's going up. Some information that's germane to the conversation that we're having today: 1 in 6 construction companies have reported a ransomware attack in the last year, 74% of which were successful. Jason shared some of those case studies, and certainly we've been involved in a few clients and non-clients, you know, hearing some of these stories of them being attacked. And this is happening. This is actively happening. Karen, thank you for sharing the statistics that you did in regards to, you know, people that are knocking at your door. I think you showed that there's 10,000 attempted attacks per week. And again, that number is going to continue to go up. You got to get it right 100% of the time. The bad guys got to get it right just 1%. I'm sorry, just one time, right? So you got to get it right 100% of the time. The bad guys got to get it right just once. And then just another statistic here: the average construction industry ransomware payment is $220,000. Jason, I tried to do the math real quick on the 5 or 6 examples. If you had that $600,000 one in there, you're probably pretty close. But going beyond that too, it goes beyond that. So I think that there was a case study in there that it was, you know, $3,000 or $4,000. But think about the downtime, think of the damage to the reputation, loss of servicing your client. So it goes beyond just the ransomware payment. So moving on, why are they trying to do this? There's a few reasons. Number one is data mining. So basically they're going into your databases, they're going into your programs, and they're basically stealing your information. They're stealing what they call PII, personally identifiable information, social security numbers, bank account and credit card information. Sometimes they're using it for their own gain, right? So that they can dupe the bank or, set up a false ID, try and steal your identity. Or in a lot of cases too, what they're doing is the bad actors, they're taking this information, they're just dumping it onto the dark web, right? Dark web is a part of the internet that you access through something that's called a Tor browser. And I suspect that any one of us, if we wanted to take, an afternoon and learn how that you could access the dark web, you could probably do it on YouTube. So but this information is sitting out on the dark web and it's for sale. You can buy credit card numbers, you can buy social security numbers. So the bad actors, they want to break in because they can either use it themselves or they could sell it on the dark web. I'm going to skip ransomware for a second. Some want to install what they call botnets. Botnets are basically a piece of software on your computer that you may or may not know that is there. And basically, it might not even do damage to your computer, but basically what they're doing is they're setting up an army of computers so that when the bad guys press a button, all of these computers that have these botnets installed on them can carry out code. For example, they might do what's called a denial of service attack. They might be sending spam emails. They might be sending phishing emails from these attacks. So they're basically trying to enlist your computer in the army of doom. I just made that up. That's not the real term. Moving on. Some folks do want to bring harm, right? They want to do malice, right? Malicious attacks, right? They actually want to delete your data. They want to steal your information. If you're in an industry where you have, trade secrets, they want to steal this. So there's real malice. And moving on, the one that we hear of, and I think the one that probably gets the most press is ransomware. So ransomware, the way that works is that the bad folks will install a program on a computer or computers on your network, right? What this piece of software does is it starts to look at all of the servers and computers that it has access to on your network. So sometimes it's file data, sometimes it's database information. Basically what it does is it goes in and it encrypts that data, right? So you come in on Monday morning and you go to click your database and that's offline. You contact your IT folks and they say, oh, I can see it right here. You've been affected by ransomware. Your database is encrypted. So there's a couple things that can happen at that point. Number one, hopefully you got a good backup and the bad guys haven't gotten to the backup, right? So you can restore, and it's not like you flick a switch and yay, we're back in business and we're up and running. I mean, you can be down for a significant amount of time, but at least you can get your data back and you can operate. If you don't have good backup, you have to pay the ransom. That's where Jason and team can come in to help. I'm sure I can give you some advice on that, but basically if you don't have a backup, either you're reaching into your own pockets or you're relying on your insurance to help you out, to help pay for that ransom. So, and even if you pay that ransom, and we've certainly heard cases of this, even if you're able to restore and you don't have to pay that ransom, a lot of people are being exploited on the dark web as well. They're still taking this information and saying, well, you didn't comply with our request, which is to pay the ransom. We're going to take this information, we're going to dump it out onto the dark web, and now all of your trade secrets are out there. So these are certainly reasons why you would be attacked. The bad guys have found out ways that they can monetize access to your information. Moving on, and we're certainly not going to go into detail on all of these, but there's several common types of attacks. I don't think that any of these, are really going to stand out to you, but there is a couple, or I should say, are going to be attacks that you haven't heard of, but a couple that I want to just focus on high level here. Phishing. Karen, I know that you mentioned that you do phishing training for your team. So phishing is basically when an attempt to obtain sensitive information. It could be a username, a password, banking, social security information for malicious reasons. And the way that they do that is by impersonating a trusted resource. Sometimes it's your bank, Facebook, it could be Yahoo, it could be Amazon, and they're trying to trick you to send over that information. So Karen and her team, they're actively working to train their staff to be on the lookout of what's a telltale sign for something of a phishing email. So you might want to be careful and get some more information on that if you are not up to speed on that. Something else, and I think this plays into something that Jason was talking about, man in the middle. And I think man in the middle can have a couple different meanings. But the one that I'm talking about is if you do not have two-factor authentication on your email, If somebody is reading your email and you don't know it, all of a sudden they could intercept an email between, say, me and Jeff, right? And they know that Jeff and I are talking about wiring instructions in a bank account. So they're going to send an email and they're going to look like it came from Jamie. And they're going to say, hey, Jeff, we didn't receive your payment because we updated our bank routing information. And they're going to put in, their bank routing information. You're going to send off the payment. You guys have your money that you just handed over that money. The man in the middle attacks are so effective because your guard is down. They know, hey, I know Jeff. This seems legit. I think I'm just going to, send this wiring instruction, or send the money to the wiring instructions that Jeff provided me. So, it's a slightly different takeoff on the phishing, this man in the middle. Something else I want to mention too is this Internet of Things. Everything, a lot of the devices that we have now, our cameras, our televisions, our refrigerators, our doorbells. This is what we call the Internet of Things. So unknowingly, people are putting these devices on their home networks and on their business networks, not recognizing that these can be, and Karen used the term threat vector or attack surface, right? People don't realize that what they're doing is they're increasing the attack surface area for the bad actors to come into your network. So I'm not saying don't use the Internet of Things, don't use these devices, but be aware, understand what the risks are, and make sure that they're patched and up to date if you're going to install those on your network. So just real quick, I want to go over a couple of things. And again, this could be a week, this could be months of training, but a couple of things I want to give you, a couple of things that you can walk away with. How can I prevent a cyber attack or breach? I think the most important thing that you can do is to implement what's called two-factor authentication on your email and remote access to your systems. So historically, access to email was based on a username and a password. In a lot of instances, two people working remotely, it was based on a username and a password. Now, what we're recommending is that you implement what's called two-factor authentication. So it's based on a username, a password, as well as sending a code to your smartphone or your mobile device. So basically, you log in with your username and a password, but then there's going to be a third level of protection that you're going to have to input a code to verify that it's you accessing your email or you logging into your system. Because if you don't have those things, brute force attack, and Karen shared us a screen that said, if you have an 8-character password, the bad actors can guess that in, half a day, an hour, 10 minutes, whatever it is. So if you have a username and a password and two-factor authentication, it's another step, another layer of protection to prevent people from reading your emails, gaining access to your systems remotely. We would strongly recommend, moving on, would strongly recommend locking down what we call remote desktop or RDP in your firewall. If there's any techies on this call, we call that port TCP port 3389. So basically, we're asking you, lock that down. Make sure that you require VPN to log into your network, and it's not just open to the world. Train your employees, very important. You can put all these defenses in place, but if you have somebody that's lowering the drawbridge to the castle, you're going to be defenseless. So train your employees. I think you also want to start with a plan. Most people, I would say your team, the people that you work with, everyone wants to do the right thing, but it has to come from management down that we are going to get serious about cybersecurity. Potentially you want to adopt what's called the cybersecurity framework. And I'm happy to talk about this, offline or another conversation, but there's lots of them out there. There's HIPAA, there's NIST, there's what we call the CIS 20, but you want to adopt a cybersecurity framework. And you're going to start to go down the list of improvements that you can make in your cybersecurity. You could start with a baseline to understand where you are, contact an IT professional, have them run a baseline, find out where you are, compare this to a cybersecurity framework, an accepted framework, find out where the gaps are, and put together a plan. That's all I got.
James, thanks so much. Very valuable information. We'll now turn it back to Jason Scishano of Levitt First Insurance, who had some additional comments.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Jamie. That was fascinating and scary. Jamie used a term at one point, I think, malicious payload. I haven't heard that term, but it kind of encapsulates what we're all dealing with here. I mean, this is literally like warfare. It's all of us against all of the bad actors out there. And if we don't win, or when we lose, or if we lose, it can be devastating, both in terms of productivity and cost. And for the record, Levitt First, just like Jamie and Karen were mentioning, I mean, we do the same type of preventative measures in our office. And just because we're not contractors, I mean, every company, every type of company should be doing these things. We have test emails being sent out to all of our staff on a random, regular basis. And, hopefully our staff identifies those emails as being malicious, and they're advised when they've identified it properly, and hopefully they don't incorrectly click on something or open it. And if they do, and it's one of those test emails, fortunately, hopefully they've learned a lesson before it causes, they open up something that can be damaging. And we also are doing regular online. There's some very good online training. It's very easy to implement, very inexpensive to implement for your entire staff, to require them to be doing that periodically, whether it's quarterly or what have you, to make sure that they're up to date and informed on the latest techniques for preventing attacks. But we're on the line primarily here with today with contractors and developers, and especially early on in the early going, a few years ago, when cyber liability insurance started to become accessible, I would go into contractors' offices and say, in addition to your construction liability insurance and in your workers' comp insurance and your property insurance to insure your building and your equipment, you also need cyber liability insurance. And, a contractor would look at me and say, what? I'm not in the computer business. I don't use credit cards. Why, how could I possibly need cyber insurance? Well, sure enough, several years later, there are so many examples now of construction contractor peers having had attacks. And in many, if not most cases, the contractor now knows of another construction firm that's been hit with an attack, that it's not an outlandish proposition to recommend a cyber insurance policy. So let me again share my screen, and we'll talk a little bit more about a cyber insurance policy. So again, why would you need a cyber insurance policy? Well, first and foremost, at the top level, you need a cyber insurance policy in case everything that James has recommended, that Jamie recommended, everything that Karen recommended, you're doing all those things and still something falls through the cracks and you're attacked. You have a cyber attack, and there's various types of damage to be done. So what would a cyber insurance policy cover? Basically two different things: first-party coverages and third-party coverages. So if you look on the screen there, you'll see examples of both. Let's talk about first-party coverages first, and I'll give you some examples. First of all, in case Jamie mentioned personally identifiable information, PII. If somebody breaches your computer databases, maybe you don't have thousands of individuals in your databases with names, address, social security numbers, credit card numbers, bank account numbers. Those are all examples of PII. But at the very least, somewhere you have a database of your staff. And your staff could be a few people, a few dozen people, a few hundred people, or a few thousand people, depending on who's on this call. But all of those people have personally identifiable information, some amount of which resides on your system. If you get breached, and it's possible, not even proven, but if it's possible that the bad actors got a hold of that PII, you have a legal responsibility. And I'm sure most of us on this call by now have gotten multiple notices from credit card companies or online service providers or what have you that have said, it's a letter that comes in the mail and it says, I'm notifying you that your information may have been breached. So the cost to identify, first of all, to identify all of the different records that may have been breached with the different amounts of personally identifiable information. And then the cost to send out those notifications is not cheap. And then on top of that, in that same notification letter, you have to offer 2 years, I believe it is, of credit monitoring for free. You have to pay for that. Your company or your insurance has to pay for credit monitoring for however many individuals may have been breached if they choose to elect for credit monitoring. That's also very expensive, of course. On top of that, you have the expense of forensic consulting. So a consultant is going to have to come in and basically, as Jamie was alluding to, they have to look into your system, find out where the hackers got to, and find out the information that was destroyed or encrypted, and then start to come up with options to rebuild those databases, to reinstall them, or to somehow unencrypt the data. Or if, worst case scenario, they say there's no other option, you have to pay the ransom if you want your database back. But that, for what we call forensic consulting expense, can be a tremendous cost. It can take dozens and dozens or hundreds of hours, and it has to be done quickly. Okay, if you're a contractor and your business is down and you're unable to get bids out, you're unable to process orders that you've got, to place orders for material, et cetera, to track labor hours, and you're unable to do business, you need this stuff to happen immediately. So in most cases, these consultants are working literally round the clock into the wee hours of the morning, addressing your situation and trying to get you back up. In many cases, oftentimes your equipment is corrupted to the point where it either requires expensive repair or it's just what we call bricked, meaning it's like somebody threw a brick at it, or it's basically as good as a brick. A brick is a dumb piece of concrete and you can't do anything with it. That's what your computer, your PC, your server, your laptop becomes if it's become encrypted beyond the point of return, and it can't be repaired. It has to be replaced. That equipment replacement costs money. In some cases, especially if you're a larger firm, you might need to do some public relations repair work, and you might need to hire a PR firm to go out and explain to all of the people whose personally identifiable information has been accessed, or credit cards, or other companies that you're working with. You might need a PR effort to explain why you're still a reliable company to do business with. That can be covered as a first-party coverage under the insurance policy. Some policies, not all, some policies will cover lost business income if you can actually prove and make a case based on your historical business financials versus what happened in the immediate hours, days, weeks after a cyber attack, that you actually lost business income as a result of the cyber attack. Some broader policies will repay you for that lost business income that you can trace directly to the attack. In some cases, there may be regulatory inquiries that require an awful lot of, again, time and effort on behalf of your staff and or consultants that you may have to hire in order to respond to the regulatory inquiry, to address their needs of the inquiry, and that has expense. And then there could be government fines and penalties depending on the information that was breached, who got a hold of it, how it was used, etc. So that's another exposure that could be covered by insurance. And finally, the big word that we keep saying over and over and over again, because it's such a common type of attack, there may be a need to make a ransomware payment. And those payments, it's not just a matter of you sending the cyber attacker a check in the mail or doing a wire transfer from your bank account or giving them your credit card number, which why would you want to do that anyway? A ransomware payment, typically up to this point, is typically in the form of some sort of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or otherwise. Does your business have a Bitcoin account? If not, somebody has got to set that Bitcoin account up. The ransomware, oftentimes, the ransom payment demand, let's say it's $300,000 or $500,000. Well, before you just send that much in Bitcoin, the insurance company, especially if they're representing you, is going to make an effort to actually negotiate that amount of ransom. And oftentimes that amount can be reduced before it's actually paid. But you're probably not an experienced ransomware negotiator. So an expert in the art of negotiating with cyber criminals is hired to perform that negotiation before the payment is actually made. All of those expenses are what we call first-party expenses, because if you didn't have the insurance, you'd have to pay for all of those expenses in that column out of pocket, out of your company. And frankly, that could ruin a lot of companies that are on this webinar. The expenses could be easily in the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. And that doesn't account for the other type of expenses, which are called third-party expenses, which is the other type of expense that a cyber policy can cover. After the first-party expenses, which are your expenses, you might be sued, because if you forward on, let's say, maybe your staff doesn't open up the malicious email that has the malicious payload that Jamie was speaking, but maybe they accidentally forward that email on to another business associate or a client, somebody on the outside, a supplier, and they happen to click on the link or they happen to open the attachment, and their entire system is corrupted and their business is brought to its knees and brought to a halt. So chances are, if they can trace that email back to your company, whether you as the principal of your company sent it out or anyone that works for you sent it out, you could have liability. You could be sued, and you could have direct legal liability for all of the costs and expense, all of the first party costs that the recipient of your malicious email that was accidentally opened up is having to pay for. So they sue you for those costs. So there's attorney fees to defend you in that lawsuit, and there's court costs. And then if, unfortunately, you are required to you have legal liability and there's a judgment against you, or an award that has to be paid by your company, or even if the deal is settled in order to make it go away before it goes to court, all of those costs are what we call third-party costs. They're money that will be paid by your insurance company, your cyber policy, to a third party that is suing you, or their costs associated with defending that lawsuit. So again, the reminder here is that cyber attacks are increasing infrequently, and they are certainly increasing in response costs. And construction contractors are absolutely, positively, as my first chart of actual real life examples showed, are not immune to these cyber attacks. So you do not want to wait until your company becomes the latest victim of one of these attacks to decide it's finally time to buy liability insurance for cyber attacks. So just a couple final words on cyber liability insurance and an insurance policy. Critically important that you understand that cyber insurance is not a substitute for a weak, outdated, unprotected, vulnerable system. If you're running your company on software, that's DOS based, or Windows number 4 based, or whatever, it's not even supported anymore. You're not using any virus protection software or any of the things that Karen and Jamie talked about that a proactive company should be doing. You can't buy a cyber liability policy for the eventuality, which is highly likely, that you will get hit by a cyber attack. The reason that you can't is because you can't just call up your broker and say, hey, quote me on a cyber policy, I want to put it in place tomorrow. You have to fill out a detailed cyber application, and a carrier might even run a vulnerability assessment before they even quote you to determine the susceptibility of your systems to one of these attacks. And if they find that one of the back doors that Jamie mentioned is wide open and ready to receive an attack, they're not going to offer you cyber liability insurance. These carriers are becoming increasingly prone to only offering quotations to companies that are doing what they can, what is reasonable, to prevent attacks in the first place. So if your system is at risk, you may not be eligible for cyber insurance. Finally, a cyber insurance policy almost always will require you to maintain current software, up-to-date software, and up-to-date antivirus software. In some policies, in the fine print might say that if you were running antivirus software that's a year old and you've missed the last 6 updates and there's a claim, there's a breach, the policy might not respond because of that. So make sure you understand that fine print. Quotes are getting more and more challenging to obtain for all of the reasons that I explained. And when we do get quotes or renewal quotes for contractors that already have this coverage in place, we are finding, some unfortunate trends. Not surprising based on everything we've discussed, but unfortunate. Deductibles are going up. You may have had a $5,000 deductible on your expiring policy. That the deductible on renewal might be $10,000. It might be $25,000. Premiums are also going up. And that, again, is not surprising given the hundreds of millions, billions of dollars that are being connected with cyber attacks. So, do not be surprised if your premium increases. It might increase well in excess of 10%. And that's not to say that you shouldn't look for the best option out there and check with other carriers. And that your broker shouldn't do that. That you may be able to get a better option than what's been quoted to you on renewal. But those companies that already have cyber insurance, I think you should be comfortable and feel good about the fact that you have the coverage. And if you get an increase, discuss it with your broker, and you can decide whether or not it's reasonable or if you should go elsewhere. But definitely do not drop the coverage. Why? Because it's more important than ever for your construction business to think not only about construction liability insurance for injuries on the job or insuring your tools and equipment. Cyber liability insurance is now a quintessential required, critically important insurance policy is part of your overall risk management practice. Thanks, Jeff.
Jason, thank you so much. Jamie, we have a question for you. The question is as follows. Do you see a correlation between the surge in cryptocurrencies and ransomware attacks?
So personally, I do not. Ransomware attacks have been around for a long time, even before cryptocurrency was in vogue. And I got to say, maybe 5 years ago, we actually had a client that fell victim to a ransomware attack. And the bad guys don't care if you understand cryptocurrency or not, or if you have an account. As Jason alluded to, guess what? We had to figure it out. We had to set up a cryptocurrency account, and then one doesn't just go to the store and buy cryptocurrency. Then you got to go on these exchanges, and you have to figure all that stuff out. So to answer your question, I don't think the bad guys care. If you what kind of cryptocurrency you have, or if you know how to use it. They're in the business of making money and extorting you, and they don't really care. So I haven't seen a correlation. We've seen, obviously, it's increasing, but I don't think it's a result of the popularity or the cryptocurrency becoming a little bit more mainstream.
We do have another question for you, Jamie. It's from a contractor. How do I know if it's safe when myself or my team is working remotely, which of course, as you know, a lot of contractors do?
Right. So I guess there isn't one definitive answer to that you could say, yes, this is safe. But I think it goes back to my original point, or a point that I made when I was going through my slides there. It has to start with the plan. So, and I think, pre-COVID, not as many people were working from home, right? But then overnight, everyone had to go home, right? Mm-hmm. They had to figure out how to be productive. And if management, if the decision makers in the company don't start with a plan, and they don't have a cybersecurity, or they don't have a remote access solution in place, your team is going to want to be productive. They're going to want to get their work done. So they're going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to install this, log me in software on my work computer, and I'm just going to use my email address and password as the password. They may not know that they're opening themselves up to this vulnerability. So the point being that, obviously there's certain things that you can do. You need to vet the solution to make sure that it's going to be secure, and username and complex password and the two-factor authentication, make sure it's a supported program and that sort of thing. But I think that even before you get to that point, you have to make a decision as an organization. We're going to be serious about cybersecurity. These are going to be the accepted methods that we're going to allow our team to work remotely from home, and everything else you have to remove immediately. So I hope that answers the question.
We have one more for you. You have the hat trick this afternoon.
Send it this way.
What is the best way to train my employees on cybersecurity?
So there's programs out there and they're really cost effective, right? So one that we use, it's called Secure Now or Breach Secure Now. And basically what it is, it's a web-based program, right? So you sign up for this. We buy it in bulk, so the cost is really quite low. But even as an independent organization, if you were to contact this company, Breach Secure Now, and say, hey, listen, we have 20 people, we have 50 people. What kind of training resources do you have available to us? They have wonderful web-based video training content. So certainly for our clients, we give them a username and a password. They have to watch a training video. It stops every 10 minutes and asks you, checkpoint questions. You have to pass those. You have to get a passing score on, having gone through this video training. As part of this program, they'll monitor the dark web to see if any of your credentials are floating around there. They'll send you the phishing tests email. They'll send you weekly micro quizzes. They'll do a newsletter, a monthly newsletter. So it's really quite easy to do. And I would recommend this one. This Breach Secure Now is actually quite good. Or Breach Secure Now.
One final question. This is for Jason Schisciano. Jason, which insurance carriers provide cyber insurance for contractors?
Well, Jeff, the list is getting shorter. I'll tell you that much.
Mhm.
You can still find if you're a contractor if you're a contractor in New York, for instance, it's unlikely that your general liability carrier is going to be able to also offer you, that same carrier also be able to offer you cyber liability insurance. If you are a contractor that is able to be insured through what we call like a standard line company, a Travelers, a Hartford, a Chubb, a CNA, a Selective, it's possible that that same company that gives you your liability insurance for your construction operations will also be able to offer you an endorsement onto your policy or a standalone policy that will give you cyber liability protection, cyber insurance protection. The critical thing there being, some contractors may be on this call saying, oh, my broker told me I have some, cyber liability coverage already in my policy. It's possible that you have what we call like throw-in coverage on your policy that might only cost literally a few $100s, and you're getting exactly what you pay for there. You might get some very minimal amount of first-party coverages, for some small de minimis coverage limit, $5,000, $25,000, that will not be sufficient if you suffer a large-scale attack. So, check with your broker. Ask them if your current liability carrier or package business owner policy carrier can add the coverage on, but make sure you know what you're getting. And if not, ask them to get a standalone quote. Great American Insurance, we have a special program for certain types of contractors, typically smaller contractors. They give cyber liability, employment practices liability, professional liability, and pollution liability, all wrapped up into one policy. It's unbelievable. I don't know how long it'll last, but right now it's still out there, and that's one option for contractors.
Jason, thank you so very much. Panelists, thank you so very much for your excellent presentations. Many thanks to Jason Schisciano, Jamie Kudla, and Karen Kavanaugh for outstanding presentations. At this point, we'll turn it back to Amanda DiPalma.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again for putting together such an informative presentation. As I had mentioned at the top of the program, this webinar will be recorded and posted on the Business Council Resource Center if you want to come back and check out any information you might have missed. It also was live streaming on the Business Council's Facebook page and will live there as well. And then, of course, check back on October 6th for the third installment of the series. And we hope to see many more of you there. Thank you all again and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Amanda.
Bye-bye.
And,
Bye now.